Apparently, the Hittite ritual of Zui recommends the use of dogs in healing. The illness is transferred to the dog with the spell, just as the puppy licks its own body parts, in the same way let it lick up the illness of this patient. I think this definitely comes under the heading of do not try this at home. Most Asian cultures, like the Hittites, had a positive view of dogs. In contrast, Israel held dogs to be unclean and regarded them with disgust. The worst possible curse that the prophet Elisha could think of to pronounce against Queen Jezebel was, "The dogs shall eat the flesh of Jezebel." And we learn that is indeed what happened. When they went to bury her, they found no more than her skull, the feet, and the palms of her hands. So it's rather embarrassing when we find in today's gospel Jesus using the insult dog to a foreign woman, even though the Greek word Canaanite means little dogs or even puppies, rather than the large strays that haunted the streets of the city. It still sounds rather rude. Jesus has moved from Galilee into the territory of Tyre and Sidon. Yet he is still recognized by a local woman whose daughter is seriously ill. Matthew describes her as a Canaanite. Nevertheless, she gives Jesus the royal Jewish title, Son of David, when she appeals to him, "Have pity on me." Yet Jesus seems unsympathetic. It is not right to take the children's bread, the children's food, and throw it to the dogs. Is that a racist slur? Is he only quoting contemporaries to test the woman's faith? Well, let's examine the text. Matthew copies this story from Mark's Gospel, but adds these words, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." The early Christians believed that God had a plan. God's salvation starts with the Jews and moves out from there to include all nations. The Apostle Paul sums this up at the beginning of his letter to the Roman Church. The gospel is God's saving power for everyone, for the Jew first and then for the Greek. Paul hasn't invented this idea, it's in the Hebrew Bible. As we heard today in our first reading, the destiny of the temple in Jerusalem is to become a house of prayer for all peoples. If this also underlies Jesus' thinking, then his reluctance to heal this foreign girl is not absolute. Rather, it's a question of priorities. That hour has not yet come. In hospitals, it's called triage. Doctors don't refuse treatment, but they do prioritize. They deal first with the most urgent cases and then the less pressing ones at a later stage. Yet this mother is persistent. She comes straight back with a retort, "But the puppies still get to eat the food the children drop on the floor." Those of us who have had children will know that that's quite a lot of a meal ends up on the ground. There would have been plenty of grub for the dogs. Jesus is impressed. "Woman, you have great faith. Let your wish be granted." This doesn't explain the use of the word dog, but it puts it in a wider context. God's purpose remains unchangeable, but his tactics are flexible. Jesus just brings the timetable forward a bit. We also see this in Paul, when he realizes that most of Israel does not accept Jesus. He doesn't despair that God's purpose has failed. Instead, the plan is modified. The church refocuses its mission on the wider world. As Paul writes, "You Gentiles have now received mercy because of Israel's disobedience." That doesn't mean God has abandoned Israel, his chosen people. This, Paul asserts, is out of the question. Israel still has a special place in God's purpose. It's just that the timetable has changed. The aim now is to first convert the Gentiles in order to make my own people jealous. Paul's hope is that this jealousy will make the Jews see sense. And in this way, all Israel will be saved. God has a purpose for each of us. But it's not a railway track that allows no deviations or adaptations. It's more like a sailing boat. There is a clear direction, but the ship may have to track backwards and forwards and sideways to reach its final goal. So knowing that God has a purpose for us all, let us, like the Canaanite woman, bring our needs before the Lord. For we too can be confident, because I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. Plans for your welfare and not for your harm. Amen.